What is software testing lifecycle? The idea is simple, right? So if you wanted to do something, you always have these four basic things: ideation, planning, execution, and monitoring. Ideation is you decide what to do, and planning is how to do it, and execution is you just do it, and then monitoring what is the outcome of what you did. That's exactly happening in software testing lifecycle as well. The ideation plan is what you're going to do. It based on your two things. One is mostly on the requirement analysis phase. You get a bunch of requirement that can be 10 years back it was all documented, so you get a document of all the requirements available in this feature. But now it's not the case. Sometimes the developer will tell you, hey, we are going to add this feature. Or sometimes a project manager will tell you in a DS, this is the next sprint goal. So that's where you get this requirement. You identify the requirement, and that is your ideation phase for testing. Then test planning. This feature is coming up. This may be a new feature. This may be a change to the existing feature. What we are going to test to make sure these requirements are met. What are all the other cases? What we discussed in the previous call. What is performance? What is functional thing? And what are all the non-functional testing you have to do? You plan all this in a test planning phase, and then you also write what we call it as test design. You document your planning, what you wanted to do. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to verify this. So this is the test design. Can be either manual or automation. Manual is pretty much documenting all in a documentation tool, Excel or anywhere else. You just write what you wanted to do. Or it can be a test automation phase where you write these functions for doing the actions what you're planning to do. So that is your test design phase. Then test environment setup. Most probably you already have this environment available for you to do all these things. But in some cases, if you are not using programmatical testing, and if you are doing manually, then you might want to set up these whatever you wanted to do. For you wanted to create some accounts with specific conditions, you wanted to create some payments with specific conditions. So you set up all these prerequisites in this test environment. That is what we call it as test environment setup. In these days, if you are doing programmatically, all of these can be created on the fly using script, but you can be doing it, preparing all these environments. So that is where it comes into test environment. Then test execution is pretty much when this feature is available in your testing environment. It can be QA, it can be staging. When it is available, you execute these tests. Then test report. Pretty much you collect all this information. What is the execution output? You manually execute it, and you collect this information. You take screenshots or whatever, or you do that programmatically. All these things, right? So this all comes into test reporting. Then defect tracking. Whenever there is you had an expectation in test planning and the expectation doesn't meet, then you call it as a bug or a defect, and then you create these records of screenshots, logs, whatever you can. You create these things, and then test closure is pretty much documenting all this. In modern times, the requirement analysis, planning, test design, and environment setup, all of them combine together into automated scripts. Requirement analysis, of course, you are supposed to read this document and figure it out. But test planning, design, and execute, environment setup, it's all some functions. You write it in your existing automation framework. Test execution is run that suite of tests when it is available. And reporting is pretty much all of these automation frameworks have its own reporting formats. Defect tracking, obviously, this is something manual as of now. You will be creating these defects when you want it to do. And test closure, usually we used to create these documents. Still, big companies following this opportunity of creating these big test closure reports and stuff. But these days, in the modern companies, in small product companies, we don't do that much of a test closure. We just collect all these defects, and then we just continue tracking the defects on the documentation. So this is pretty much, you see this pattern, right? Ideation and planning comes into understanding the requirement and write scripts for that. And then execution is pretty much execution, and then monitoring is pretty much defect tracking, test closure, document creation, whatever documents you wanted to create, those kind of things. So this is an overview about what is software testing lifecycle is. If you are comparing with development do the same thing, but as software testing lifecycle will be part of the testing phase of the software development lifecycle. But it's pretty much currently it's all, the difference is very thin, that it's overlapping with each other. That's pretty much it for today.